Hello everyone, Waxo here, with the second edition in the Underlook series. Today we'll be discussing A Plague's Tale: Innocence. A Plague's Tale is a game that took me a while to get through, but not because I was disinterested or found it incredibly difficult, but because it was an emotionally taxing journey from just about start to finish. This is a dark, morose game that is at times hard to stomach, but it is definitely worth playing through. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content in the future. And now, without further ado, let's hop into the discussion. A Plague's Tale is an adventure horror game in which you play as Amicia de Rune, a teenage daughter of nobility in mid-14th century France. When her home is invaded by English inquisitors and her family and helpers slaughtered, she must now protect her younger brother Hugo, whom she has had little interaction with since her mother has hid him away for most of his life due to a mysterious affliction, and tasked with finding a man who can help him. While they do so, not only is the Inquisition hot on their trail, searching for the boy, but the surrounding region is being terrorized by a grotesque plague known as the Bite, which is carried and transferred by enormous hordes of human-hungry rats that devour anything that isn't covered by some sort of light source. Along their journey, they also run into other orphans who end up tagging along and helping Amicia and Hugo, as their lives have also been uprooted by either the Inquisition or the plague. And I want to make a quick note that this is a very careful summary of the overall story. It's a very, very good story, so I'm not trying to spoil too much here with this summary. The writing here is absolutely top-notch from start to finish. The dynamic between Amicia and Hugo is brilliantly sold, since though they are siblings, they aren't at all familiar with one another due to their mother having kept Hugo hidden away for most of his life. The progression of the relationship and the complications that come between them due to either Amicia being too protective of him or Hugo acting like the child he is, comes naturally as the story progresses. The other orphans, for the most part, are also well written and have convincing development throughout. The only one I felt was a little underdeveloped was Arthur, but that could be chalked up to the fact that his sister, Mélie, whom you interact with more frequently, essentially tells both sides of their story. Along with the terrific writing comes A Plague's Tale's masterful handling of atmosphere. From the moment the Inquisition arrives and you're tasked with quietly traversing the villa without alerting the Inquisitors in search of young Hugo, you're plunged into this dark, depressing world full of infected towns, corpse-filled battlefields, and rat-infested environments, and it only rarely lets up. And what's really somber about A Plague's Tale is the fact that it's framed from the perspective of children, as Amicia is most certainly only in her mid-teens and seems to be amongst the oldest of the band of orphans. And though dark and unrelenting, I never felt as if it overstayed its welcome or was edgy and dark just for the sake of being so. The world lent itself for the relentlessness, and though emotionally exhausting at times, didn't seem forced or for the sake of awe and pure shock value. The overall graphical quality of this game is very attractive to look at, even if what you are looking at is grotesque at times. From sunny meadows to abandoned cathedrals, one chapter in particular sees the children sneaking around a moonlit, stormy night as they attempt to find an old castle, traveling through a gorgeous cavern and spotting the castle itself foregrounded against lightning bolts in an overcast sky. Actually, because of how stunning this game looked at times, it was also one of the few games in which I took advantage of the photo mode, the only other title being Red Dead Redemption 2. During my 10 or so hour playthrough, I cannot at all recall any sort of pop-in or drop-in frames. It should also be mentioned that this is a AA game that rivals, even topples, the graphical fidelity of some of the biggest of AAA experiences, a feat that should not go unrecognized. Gameplay is the only place that really falters when it comes to the overall experience of A Plague's Tale. My biggest gripe is not only the gameplay itself, but the system in which they went with in general. The game is stealth-based with puzzles scattered throughout, most of which have you planning on how you're supposed to navigate through sections of rat hordes. My complaint comes mostly from the combat and upgrade system. Starting with the former, combat involves using Amicia's sling to hurl rocks at Inquisitors with deadly force and using craftables to both interact with your surroundings, like lighting smothered fire pits and attract rats to particular locations, to subduing enemies with helmet-melting concoctions or putting them to sleep. Though Amicia using her sling to kill people actually becomes thematically relevant as the story progresses, I feel as if it would have been a greater experience if I had just been tasked with sneaking around levels rather than using her sling as a tool. My reasoning here is plain and simple. It's just not all that fun. The sling just felt horribly slow that if combat actually broke out, having to wait for Amicia to load her sling over was frustrating at best. This issue can be rectified via the upgrade system, which also includes more pouch space, etc. But most upgrades require the same materials you need to craft the important craftables in order to traverse the environment. And even though you do find quite an abundance of resources, the abundance only further discourages you from buying the more pouch space upgrade. Essentially what I'm saying is that it's a system that at first glance makes you believe you need to invest into it, but as you actually play you realize just how irrelevant it is. The game is also on the easy side, in which most of my deaths were due to not knowing where I was because I decided to play on the limited HUD mode, and found myself being devoured by rats where I should have thrown a firebomb. I should also note that there are some collectibles in hidden areas that further flesh out the world, such as a blacksmith forge where one of the orphans lived that was overtaken by the rats and offered a moment of finality and grieving for them. Other than that though, I didn't ever find myself really seeking them out. A Plague Tale: Innocence is an amazing hidden gem that should definitely be played by those looking for a well-written narrative-driven adventure. The writing here is stellar, and the journey Amicia and Hugo are forced into is one that is properly grim, but certainly should be taken despite some of the shortcomings in the gameplay department. If you are an Xbox owner and have Game Pass, you should definitely give this game a playthrough. This has been Waxo, and until next time guys, take it easy.